Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone to Garden of Doom, and this week we are going to be talking about dragons. That's right, those big lizards, reptiles that fly and breathe fire and occupy different parts of our psyche and our consciousness. And play different roles in different parts of the world, whether it's St. George slaying the dragon in Britain as a metaphor, or maybe not, or in Asia where it's semi-divine. We're going to talk about all sorts of things. And my guest this week is Dominique Braggs. And how are you doing, Dominique? And please introduce yourself to the millions and millions of Garden of Doomers.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dominique Braggs. I am an attorney, but don't let that stop you from enjoying this program. I am also a 1994 graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. With courage we soar. So hello to everyone, shout out.
That's great. How many people have you killed? Well,
first of all, if I answer that, I'm going to have to add you to the list.
That's fine. I accept.
But 27 different ways to kill someone with my bare hands.
That's excellent. Yeah, I should have limited to just bare hands. Okay. I could tell the first time I met you that there was obviously a large body count just from physical contact. So, yeah. So this is great. So Dominique, in addition to being a lawyer and a West Point grad, is a dragonophile. I think I just made that word up. And Dracophile is probably what it really is. But that's, I guess, combining Latin and Greek. But others have done that, right? I mean, I can't be the first. And if I am, Dracophile, trademark pending, trademark asserted, and I already have one. See, this is a United States trademark for Garden of Doom. See that? You might know the people who helped me get that. So anyway, tell us about when you fell in love with dragons, what you love about dragons, and then take us through where you want to start.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I need to make sure that everyone can see my T-shirt. So
no one can see your T-shirt. This is an audio podcast, so you can you can tell them what it says. You can describe it.
Well, my T-shirt just says, "I'm here because I was told there would be dragons."
Right.
Half the time when I show up in some place, it's because I've been told there would be dragons.
We should, we're both lawyers, so we should put, you reminded me, we should put the caveat and the disclaimer to the audience. Hic sunt draconis, here there be dragons, and traveler beware, there are monsters beyond. Here there be dragons, so beware. If you're worried, if you're scared of dragons, just tune out. skip this episode. But if you're brave, if you're not a little wussy, if you're not a little mouse person, then you won't be afraid of dragons and you'll continue. So I'm sorry. I just, it's my show. I can interject when I want.
No problem. Yeah, you can do what you want to do on there. Yeah. So I actually became a fan of dragons, I would say probably about 7 to 8 years ago. I joined a sci-fi book club in Springfield, Virginia, and unfortunately due to the pandemic we haven't been able to meet in person in a while, but that we would normally read one sci-fi book and one fantasy book during the month, and then meet and discuss those books. And through expanding my reading in the fantasy genre, I realized I really, really like dragons.
Yep.
There's just something about them. Now, granted, when our group would meet, if we were discussing a book that included a dragon in some form, literally, as soon as we would open the meeting, they would turn and look at me and say, okay, now what are your thoughts? And I would normally say, this poor, misunderstood dragon was just minding his own business. People are coming, they're trying to kill him, they're calling it west. In my mind, they're just misunderstood.
I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, first of all, dragons are millennia old. And so, yeah, they might be scary to humans and their livestock, but they were here first. They are the indigenous creatures of the earth. They are the titans of old, or one of the titans of old. And they only wake up every now and then. And so, yeah, it seems like they're trespassing upon your lifestyle. And yeah, maybe they are, but you trespass upon theirs. Probably your ancestors and their ancestors did as well. Maybe they didn't realize it. Maybe they did. But yeah, so as a child, I'm a little bit older than you, maybe a lot. I'm not sure, and I won't ask.
That's very good of you to say that. I appreciate it.
Well, like you said, you're a 1994 graduate of West Point, and I'm a 1990 graduate of Emory. So, I mean, I'm probably 4 years older than you.
In my mind, I'm only 22.
Oh.
Of course, my 26-year-old daughter always asks me to stop saying that because. But I think it's parents' prerogative to always embarrass their children.
Well, General Braggs, I think that's more of a her problem than a your problem. By the way, what was your final rank?
I was a problem child. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh, I see. So, major busted down to corporal. Got it. Okay. So.
Maybe.
not so far. Wow. Okay. It's funny because I have a episode of Garden Views with I had a guest who he's a lawyer also, and he him and a older attorney that when he was they were both younger then. Anyway, they basically wrote the book. They invented it. They actually had federal and state laws changed during the course of this epic adventure, which sort of fits into our story about suing state sponsors of terrorism. So now all sorts of big shot firms have done it. They've done all the work. Literally, they got a senator to lead a federal law change. They got a state senator to lead a state law change in New York, and they went up to the Supreme Court. Everything. Anyway, the point of this is that his story is great because he goes, yeah, so I went to college in Jacksonville and I got kicked out for drunken fighting. And then they let me back in and I got kicked out for drunken fighting. And he just tells it like that. And it's just great. I mean, it's like right then I'm just like, I love this guy. Anyway, so folks, look for that show. But on Epic Adventures, so I think when I started this little meandering, which again is my specialty, I was saying I'm a little bit older and I'm not sure if this is my first exposure to a dragon, but it could have been, and that was Puff, the magic dragon, which of course is really not a dragon at all. I mean, it's a sort of a guy in a suit with like a mushroom head, and it was someone's stoner dream. I mean, there had to have been dragons in some stories that someone read in fairy tales or something but I mean, I remember my grandparents took me to the live Puff the Magic Dragon show at the Felt Forum, which is one of the smaller theaters in the Madison Square Garden complex. So Is Puff the Magic Dragon your first exposure? Or, I mean, you like me are too old for Dragon Tales to be part of your youth, but Dragon Tales was part of my kids' youth, and I pretty much can still sing the song. I won't, but I can.
I had not thought about Puff in a long time until you mentioned it, but I do recall, I think there was an animated series or
there was.
An animated show.
There was.
Because I remember singing that song. So I didn't know exactly what it was at the time, but I do remember.
Nobody knew exactly what it was. There was like an owl guy in a tree house. There were like little soldiers. There was like Peter Piper he was looking for his magic flute. I mean, everything talked. It was just a mushroom-induced, ayahuasca dream or something. It was amazing. I looked for deeper meaning in some of those shows, and I sort of gave up halfway through reviewing Land of the Lost because I really thought there'd be clues there, like there'd be symbolism that an adult would pick up that a kid wouldn't. Nah, it was just they threw together a bunch of shit. So there was Puff, and then I mean, again, there had to be others, but the next one I remember is from The Hobbit. I think Smaug. I think his name is Smaug.
Smaug, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's like your stereotypical dragon living in a mountain, underneath or guarding hordes of treasure.
And completely misunderstood. He was just guarding his home.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. He wasn't out there trying to hurt anyone. He wasn't going after anyone. He was a homebody. He's like, I just want to be at home and be left alone.
Right. He was doing the quarantine before it was cool. And listen, we think he's hoarding all the treasure, but we have no idea what prices are in Dragon World. When you go to Dragon Market, their inflation could be crazy. I mean, all that he had there, but that might have just gotten him some eggs and milk. We don't know.
We don't know.
Gold could have been the poor man's exchange in Dragon World. Just because we value it and the Anunnaki value it doesn't mean dragons value it the same. Right?
That's true. Yeah. I agree, 100%.
A little aside for those kids who know Dragon Tales, or who people my age that their kids made them know Dragon Tales, Wesley Ure from Land of the Lost, who was Wesley, wrote the song to Dragon Tales and actually wrote all the episodes of Dragon Tales. Yeah. Do you even know who that is, Wesley Ure?
I have no idea. I'm so sorry.
Do you remember Land of the Lost?
I do.
Okay,
I do remember Land of the
Well,
Lost.
Wesley was the older brother, but they only called him Wesley for like the first 2 seasons because I think they were trying to make him like a teen heartthrob, like a David Cassidy or Sean Cassidy or Leif Garretson or Leif Garrett.
I'm going to pretend that I do not know who any of those 3 guys were, even though I had their posters on my bedroom wall when I was growing up.
Good spy trade. All right, so I seem to be hijacking things, which is sort of something I do also. But yeah, so dragons are misunderstood. So who was your first dragon exposure? Mine was Puff and Smaug. But who was yours?
Well, I agree with what you're saying about Puff because just based on my age, he's probably the one. As I said, I didn't come into my real love of dragons until about 7 or 8 years ago. Of course, during that time, we had the Game of Thrones series. Mm-hmm. And I think for those who weren't exposed to dragons via The Hobbit, they were probably exposed via Game of Thrones. I mean, those were some of the most awesome episodes. Just, a lot of those episodes, they might drag them on. Every once in a while, they would do something very surprising. But the dragons were really cool.
Yes.
And so that was like, whoa.
Until the end.
Well, until the end. That was the bummer. What's the word I'm supposed to use?
Anticlimactic.
Yeah. Oh, spoiler for anyone who hasn't already.
For a show that stopped airing new episodes 5 years ago. But all right, spoiler alert, sure. At the end, the dragons do something. Well, the dragon does something stupid.
Yes. Well, and I tend to do more reading. I was always known as a bookworm. I always had a book with me when I was growing up. And so I might have mentioned previously that I like reading the dragon stories, the dragon riders with Pern.
Right, and McCafferty, right?
Yes. The Temier series by Naomi Novak. And I could be mispronouncing his name. I'm not sure. His name is French. I took French in college. I remember after a year of college, a year of study, I remember exactly 2 phrases. Of course, my name is Dominique, and the French instructor changed my name to Diana. So, je m'appelle Diana. I know, right? And the second phrase was, je ne comprends pas. I don't understand. I've said that at least a half a dozen times every class. So, I may be mispronouncing his name.
I have no idea, but I mean, listen, I'm no linguistics expert, but I'm pretty sure that Diana is Greek or Roman, and I'm pretty sure that Dominique is French, which is French.
French.
Okay. So, good teacher there.
Again, this is why I struggled. Although I did have 4 years of Latin, so I thought that would give me a little bit of a leg up, and it did not.
Yeah, I don't know. But can you chant? Never mind. That's not important.
I was actually taught by a defrocked monk in junior high and high school, and so I learned how to curse and how to pray in Latin.
I think that your entire education, up and including West Point, I think maybe you just like a series of bad luck teachers. You have a French instructor who changes your name from a French name to something non-French. You have a defrocked monk teaching some sort of religious language, basically. Yep, go ahead.
I also have to say, I have a soft spot for teachers. My mother was a teacher for 32 years. So I've met some characters, but I love them.
Understood. So dragons. We have a lot of them in the fictional world, mostly fantasy. The Hobbit probably being the singular most famous, but we also have in historic parable. Maybe it's parable, maybe not. But the story of England is that St. George killed the dragon. Some people say that it's just an allegory for the dragon being paganism and St. George bringing Christianity. But no, I think that George actually killed the dragon. I mean, I think that is, how else do you explain Stonehenge and mountains?
You've got a great point there.
I know.
Great point. I did learn that story probably back when I was in elementary school, and I recall the story. It was...
Wait. Was your instructor a Scottish rebel?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately not.
That would fit with the pattern, or like a member of the IRA. Okay, so how did you learn the story?
Well, I learned the story that there was a village. There was they would have to make, I think, annual sacrifices or something. But there's this idea that dragons love young virgins, so they would make these sacrifices. And you had the damsels in distress, whoever it was that was taken up to the cave and chained outside, waiting for the dragon to show up. And St. George comes along on his trusty charger with his, and slays the dragon and frees the damsel that's in distress. And the villagers are so thankful that they, as you said, convert to Christianity because obviously, that was why St. George was able to slay that dragon, because he was a believer.
Yes. And, it's hard to sort of separate the dragon as being, sort of serpentine plus, but all the horns, the fire, the image is not so different than a Baphomet or some of the, old images of Satan or demons with reptilian wings and claws and a tail, just sort of, all steroided up. So there's always those illusions.
And interestingly, I never really considered dragons in that capacity. And I understand that through the ages, that was kind of how the stories developed. That was how people saw dragons. Funny enough, my grandmother used to say, "Oh, you need to stop being heathen and make sure you go to church." But she didn't foresee my love of dragons. but there was just something about, they're not good-looking creatures. You can say that. In some respects, they might be majestic in some ways as far as how they're depicted, but for the most part, just the idea of there's this fire-breathing being that hoards treasures and despoils innocence.
Despoils. That might maybe the first time that word made it into the Garden of Doom. Very good.
You're welcome.
Right. We have used defenestration before.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a nice word.
And I've used evacuate properly, though. I'm not sure anyone else caught it.
Okay. So to your point, there is the idea, we talk about what was in our popular culture. So growing up in the 80s and 90s, the idea of St. George slaying the dragons, the idea of the dragon Smog. And even though you don't see him, you assume that he's more of a serpentine type creature because you don't see him out of his cave flying around.
Right.
I might have mentioned earlier, or you might bring this up. I don't know, but I love dragons. I love everything about them. I do not like snakes or serpents, so that's just a little bit of irony there, because most of the dragon lore is based upon the idea of giant serpents or giant snakes, and we as humans tend to have this visceral reaction to the idea of the snake, that innate fear. Whether, I think I read somewhere that about 39% of the population just has this irrational fear of snakes. We don't really know why. And I'm actually one of that. I'm a member of that 39% of the population. I'm not a big fan of snakes, though. It was ironic being in the Army, and every time I turned around, they were throwing us outside to do some things, and especially in New York, there were quite a few snakes in the area, in the woods of New York. So I'm not a fan of
snakes are in New York. I mean, they're not poisonous of big snakes. Aren't they a little more like your garter snakes and your small little snakes like that?
No, around the woods that we were in, there were some copperheads in those woods. There were cottonmouth snakes in the lakes. But the way that I looked at it, my philosophy was tunnel vision. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. And that was actually helpful when we were camping out in the woods. And, during our summer training, we would be in these cabins in the woods. And one day I walked in and a black snake slithered out from under my bunk.
Is it like a black cat that's bad luck?
I switched to a different building. I did a move to a different building, and they allowed it.
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a fair amount of poisonous snakes out there in the world. I mean, they are, very foreign looking to us.
Yes.
There are the old myths of various different types of reptilian or, serpentine, gods that, tinkered with humans, whether that's because of the fear of snakes that's, that 39% of people have. Let's just assume that they always had it, going back to Sumeria, but even in some of the African tribes, their origin story has similar types of stories. We have in Greek mythology, you had, I think it was Zeus who had to defeat Typhon, which was a flying snake, which is sort of getting to a dragon. I mean, of course, Thor and the Midgard serpent, which was a snake that literally encircled the world, and they basically killed each other. So, and then, of course, the world's most famous snake, maybe not a snake, maybe Satan, maybe not Satan. What is Satan? Let's just forget about all of those questions, which we explore in the garden. But obviously, the snake that supposedly talked Eve into partaking into the forbidden fruit, and then she, said, "Hey, Adam, I know it's a bad idea, but it's, really not such a bad idea." And he's like, "All right, Eve, cool. That's like, I don't really have anyone else to talk to besides you, so, I'm not going to fight him over this." And then cast the out, and, and that led to, murder and mayhem and begetting and...
Well, it's the loss of paradise.
Loss of paradise, guarded by Eve.
I'm glad that you mentioned mythology. I actually kind of forgot about this, so maybe this was the foundation of my love of dragons.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved, and I was a voracious reader of Greek mythology. So I remember back the first movie that I remember seeing about this was Clash of the Titans, and I loved it. I adored Harry Hamlin.
So did Lisa Rinna.
Sorry, what's that?
So did first so did Ursula Andress. Then so did Lisa Rinna.
Yes. But I saw that movie, and the movie honestly does not age well, but it was still enjoyable.
Still better than the remake.
That's true. I started reading everything that I could about Greek mythology at that point, and I went through Greek mythology. I read some Egyptian mythology, Norse mythology. So to your point, the whole idea about the serpent that's encircling the world. Like I said, I was never a big fan of the serpents, whether they were the sea serpents, whether they were, giant serpents on land or something, serpents within mythology. I was not, not a fan of those, but it probably did lay the foundation for, when I started doing more reading about fantasy within the fantasy genre. And at that point, to me, I think dragons are adorable with their, spiny fins and their scales and, whether it's jewel-toned or not, their wings. And of course, there's some that have wings. There are some that don't have wings. I tend to prefer the ones that have wings and just the idea of being able to fly and
freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which dragons don't have wings?
It tends to be the ones that were in Chinese mythology or other cultures in Asia. They tended to be depicted as large serpents, with 4 legs but with no wings. So wings
and almost like lion-like faces, right?
Right. And you didn't start seeing the dragons depicted with wings until you're looking at the Western cultures, right. And there was that idea of winged creatures. So, but there are other. I look at dragons, and I'm looking at the end results, kind of the type of dragons that you see on Game of Thrones or something. Mm-hmm. But there are also the variation, the giant worms, the gargoyles. That whole idea. This was a type of dragon set in stone.
Well, Gargoyle was a sea serpent that terrorized. I guess it was Paris.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there was another saint. I just did a show on gargoyles. I've already forgotten which saint killed. Maybe Augustus or Romanus, some fancy name like that. Allegedly killed the sea serpent, and that's where the name of gargoyle came from gargoyle, which gargoyle basically is the same root word as gargle. It just means throat. Garrote. You know garrotes.
Yeah. Again, I was not very good at French, but I did have that Latin underpinning.
But you were good at stealth murder. Well, it's not murder if it's sanctioned.
Sanctioned. Well, okay. I'm gonna come clean with you.
Please.
I was actually a finance officer. So.
Come on.
Now, granted, West Point did teach me a lot of things, but I was not an outdoors person, and so when it was time to select a branch.
Most of the people you would kill would also be indoors.
That is true. That is true.
You're like ruining my whole narrative here. All right, off of the fact that you can't kill. Great. I mean, or if you can, it's probably no better than I can kill, which is one of my great failures in life, is not having murdered enough. So anyway, and there's a long list of failures here, let me assure you. So what I'm trying to figure out is, and I'm thinking about it, and I struggle with it. What came first, the dragons or the Christianity? Because I think it has to be the dragons, but I don't remember too many stories specifically about, and I'm talking from mostly a Western viewpoint, because in Asia, the dragon, like you said, it was depicted differently. If someone gave that creature a different name or gave Western dragons a different name, it was a whole different thing. It was in China, the dragon is divine. When you see the dragon, that's good fortune. The dragon, I mean, that's like as close as you get to God and the gods. That's like your entryway. Probably most people are familiar with it most recently from the Marvel movie. I think it's Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. But even other serpents. Quetzalcoatl was sort of like a firebird, or maybe a bird serpent. It's not entirely clear. So a lot of the South American, Central American, Quetzalcoatl was Aztec, I think, and probably also that Toltec, that whole thing. But the images, even in some of those Central American and Middle Eastern, Near Eastern images of sort of bird serpent gods, they look uncannily similar. So going back to the Western version of dragon, reptiles, giant, devil-like monsters that are misunderstood, with or without wings, scales, fire. What do we know what the sort of the oldest depiction of a dragon in literature is, or storytelling? Because I know a lot of things weren't written.
I'm not really sure, although my understanding is that some of these stories were probably developed around the fact that our ancestors found things like dinosaur bones, or when we used to have larger creatures, that are now extinct. But if you were to see, one of these huge flying dinosaurs, or you found their bones, how else do you explain, what this creature could have looked like? There were also stories of, finding whales in different places, who were these huge creatures in these oceans. But if you imagine finding their bones on land, again, how did our ancestors kind of explain to themselves what this could be from?
Interesting thing about whales, their shoulder bones development, aside from the proportions, are exactly the same as ours. But of course, their side, I guess I'll call them flippers, which is, I'm not even sure if that's the right term with a whale, obviously spread out much larger, so could be a wing. But actually, they were also land whales, and they found one in the Sahara Desert of all places. Sort of like four-legged creatures. They would look like basically a giant hippopotamus, sort of, but almost like a tall crocodile. And what else might that be other than a dragon? And I believe these whales they were like more like whales and porpoises are in the same family, and I think the difference between porpoises and dolphins basically is that porpoises have sharp teeth and dolphins don't. And I think there's some other differences as well, but I think that's the big one you can tell is the teeth. So if they had sharp teeth, I imagine the bigger ones had more teeth, and so maybe you think of that as a dragon. I'm not sure either. I haven't really looked into the history. You'd think that if St. George killed the dragon, if first there was the dragon before there was the reason to slay it and make it a parable for Christianity. And I know I've used allegory and parable, and yes, those smart people out there, it's because I don't really know the difference between exactly what those two words mean. So close enough for government work or podcasting. But I feel like there have been dragons in lots of legends, but I'm thinking about Greek mythology, and I can't really think of anything that was exactly a dragon, but they were harpies, with reptile wings. Definitely we had
Gorgons.
What's that?
The Hydra.
Gorgons, right?
The Hydra that I can't remember if it was Hercules or
Hercules. Well, they're the same.
The Hydra.
Yeah,
and we considered that to be a multi-headed serpent.
Mm-hmm.
A huge serpent. So there are, throughout our mythologies, there are these depictions of creatures, and what we consider to be dragons. They tend to be four-legged. That was the thing. Whether or not they had wings, they had four legs. You mentioned crocodiles earlier, and the fact that there at one point had been these large crocodiles that lived on land who could actually raise their torso up off the ground, and that was how they maneuvered on land. And so that has been the depiction when we think about how a dragon might move on land if they don't have wings, if they're not flying. It's kind of this creature who could be rather large, but typically they only have four legs.
Yeah, I remember in the 80s that swords and sorcery was a big thing. I think possibly because of the success of Conan the Barbarian, and there were some books, and there were always dragons in these movies. And I remember there were ones with, and by the way, they always tried to find a guy that looked enough like Harry Hamlin to pass, as the next Harry Hamlin. And then, and they would have, women in scantily clad outfits, sort of like the covers of the John Carter from Mars series, the old Edgar Rice Burroughs things, which people might be, there were references to it in the show Lovecraft Country, in that the Red Princess and a lot of that stuff was straight out of John Carter from Mars. But I swear, I just can't remember where and when I saw my first historic reference to a dragon. But you're right. There's always been dragon-like creatures going back even to Sumerian or Babylon. There was Shaitan, Shaitan, which is of course the English spelling of a Sumerian or Babylonian word, which is. I mean, I'm not even sure what the language is, but whatever is probably close to Aramaic. But something Proto-Persian, something along those lines. I'm going to have someone that's going to do a linguistics show after we do the Lilith show. Speaking of Lilith, the mother of monsters. In some stories, once she was rejected and cast out of Eden the first time because apparently she was too bossy for Adam, there are some stories that she basically turned into a gorgon or a harpy, grew wings, and flew off. And then I heard another story, and this is maybe nothing to do with dragons, maybe everything to do with dragons, because Lilith is said to be the mother of monsters, which you can extrapolate to, Watchers interbreeding with the daughters of Adam. You can do Anunnaki if you want. You can do the Dogon, the dolphin people, whatever you want, you can put there. But the point is that apparently Lilith ran away, and God, who apparently is all powerful but is sort of lazy, sent two angels to take care of it instead of just doing it himself or herself. I'm going to go herself. God's lazy, and it's a her. Even though I've known very few lazy women, I know lots of lazy men, starting with myself.
I think I would dispute you on that fact. And just the fact
it's not a fact. It's fiction. It's absolutely the reverse of most reality.
Well, the idea that she's considered to be the mother of monsters, there you go, taking a strong woman and
that's right.
And I'm not thinking you yourself, but
I'm just repeating the story. Literally the first time I heard of Lilith as a character in some sort of historical theological sense was when the Lilith Fair was created, I think in the 90s, which were all the female bands, and it was sort of an empowerment thing, sort of taking back Lilith. But back to our little story. So God dispatched two angels to go capture Lilith. And apparently they were flying around the world and they couldn't quite, catch up to her, but she could see them. And they're like, we're going to get you. And she's like, hey guys, you don't really need to get me because I promise I'll just go away and no one will ever see me again and I'll never bother anyone again. And Angel's like, I don't know. They must sound like the Lenny and Squiggy or Abbott and Costello of angels. And they're like, yeah, okay. All this flying around is tiring. And all-powerful God obviously isn't paying attention to us right now. He's, creating rings of Saturn today or whatever. And they're like, all right, cool, peace out. And they gave up. And so Lilith abounds. So maybe Lilith was our first dragon.
Possibly. Quite possibly.
Now, because the serpent actually came after Lilith. Now, I have read authors who posited that Cain was actually the child of Lilith and Adam, and actually Lilith may have been the one who was the serpent. But that's all,
I have heard that story, that Lilith potentially was the serpent that was in the garden. Yeah.
And this is not just people playing with fiction. I mean, maybe it is, but the Masonic legend, which may or may not be actually related to Masons, Grand Masons, whatever, but it's also tied, I believe, to left-hand belief, which is sort of the occult, sort of the more Luciferian versus regular traditional Abrahamic religions. In the Masonic legend, it is that Lilith and Adam gave birth to Cain, and that from Cain's line came all of the people who had certain traits, and so they're the either the special ones or they're the bad ones. I mean, it makes sense that they're the bad ones, but this is not my field exactly. I read it, but I forget a lot of things. And that's why I have experts and guests on this show to remind me and talk about those things. But so either everything bad flowed from the children of Cain, or everything good, if you ever listen to the song Atlantis, like the 12, the poet, the artist, the healer, everything useful came from Cain, and everything sort of useless came from Abel. I don't know, but lots of religions have like their version, everything good came from Seth, everything bad came from Ham, or whatever it is. I mean, I've known enough people in my life to know that nothing all good or all bad comes from any offspring. Maybe then it was different when there was a smaller gene pool. Maybe it's now that we're all sort of mixed bags. Dragons. So could Lilith be our first dragon, or maybe not, because that was only if we're to believe the Jewish calendar, that was like around 5,700 years ago, 5,800 years ago, whatever Rosh Hashanah, whatever the date turns to, the new year. And it seems to me that there were probably dragons before that too.
I would assume so. I mean, personally, I am making the assumption that dragons, at the very least, were around during the age of dinosaurs. That's my assumption, because based on the way that we depict them, I would not be surprised if, as I said, due to their size, due to the way that they're depicted, that the dragons or that dinosaurs were their ancestors, and so.
Or descendants.
Or, yeah.
they're less ambitious children.
That is true. That's true.
It could be, or maybe the dinosaurs interbred with dinosaurs, and you mentioned you got just less effective dragons. They lost the ability to cast fire. Only some could fly, but they liked fish, and no one likes fish.
And that's the interesting thing. We're talking about Eastern versus Western depictions of dragons, and going back to again my favorite stories about the dragons, the Naomi Novak novels. They're looking at an alternate type of universe where what would happen if we had tame dragons and the Napoleonic Wars were fought with dragons. And you mentioned South America and the types of dragons that you might see there, the very colorful ones. I had mentioned in Chinese dragons have been depicted as celestial or some sort of imperial being. They tended to be more associated with the heavens, or even had more of an affinity towards water. So you didn't tend to see Chinese dragons that were fire-breathing dragons at that point. That was something that we see more of in Western cultures.
and again, I think it's maybe the false association with, hell, brimstone, and hellfire, that kind of thing. It's just the way you see it. Now, the Firebirds are interesting because they seem to, exude like a flame-like characteristic, but that's more in the flight. I don't think that it's used in any sort of offensive capacity, but then again, they're viewed as gods, so they didn't need to use. I mean, I may be wrong, but I don't believe the Quetzalcoatl or sort of the similar deities as you go further south had rivals. I think that they were the gods, and I mean, I don't know enough about it to be sure, but I don't think it was like the Greeks where they had to beat the Titans, and the Titans had to beat the pre-Titans. Because I'll just say it the way that's not controversial. Like Uranus was Cronus's father, and Cronus had to do something with Uranus, and then Zeus had to kill do something with Kronos. There's like generations of gods, which really doesn't sound very godlike, but Norse is similar too. There were things and creatures before the gods, and there's the Aesir, which we know from Asgard. That's your Odin and your Thor and whatever. But they're also the Vanir, and they're almost like the agriculture and medicine but we don't know much about them except that there was some war and they resolved it by, well, what do you do back in those days? You marry, and they sent Frigg or Freya to marry Odin, and that's sort of the last we hear of the Vanir. I'm not even sure if they participated in Ragnarok. They just sort of were there. But, again, there's sort of generations of gods. Even in Sumerian, you had Anu, who sort of is like my depiction of God in the Lilith story. Sort of like, I'm all powerful, but I don't really want to bother with crap. So you two, Enlil and Enki, you guys deal with it. And, don't bother me unless something's important. The game is on, okay? The Jets are going to do it this year. I'm telling you. They got this kid out of Virginia Tech, and I'm telling you. So don't bother me for the next 6,000 years. And then
speaking of the game, I also need to give a shout out to Coach K. Good luck on his final season. I had an opportunity to meet him back, I think it was in 1992, and my daughter, who's also a graduate, had a chance to meet him back in, I believe it was 2018. So I know that this is his last hurrah. Congratulations to him.
Well,
sorry, I just thrown that out there.
It's all right. Well, depending on when this show airs, we will either know if he was successful or not. But he certainly has had a very successful career. Was 92? Was that the first Dream Team year?
I don't remember. What I do remember is Coach Pick came up to West Point and he brought a few of his players with him. And the player that I remember, Grant Hill. Oh. He had Grant Hill with him, and that was really the highlight of the visit.
Okay, I think I can pick up the thread upon you're laying down there. I think I can smell what the Rock is cooking here. Yeah, Grant Hill was one of those players who was supposed to be one of the next great players, and he just turned out to be a pretty good player. But he had a very long career. So,
he did.
But yes, good looking, good for commercials, good for commentary. I'm sure he's leading a very healthy, happy, successful life. So, good on you, Grant Hill. And hey, went to Duke, so I mean, Well, I went to Emory, and people would probably say that I should have turned out better. And you know what? You're all right. I should have turned out better.
Well, I also have to give Grant Hill credit. I did not know him in high school, but I understand. I believe I attended Yorktown High School in Arlington, Virginia. I believe he attended South Lakes. So we did actually play basketball against them.
Is it true that he hated dragons, and that's why you wouldn't give him your number?
You know what? We're going to go with that. We're going to go with that. Yes.
Very good. So it's funny that you brought up gargoyles because they look a little bit like one might think of a dragon or a demon, but they're something different. But I mean, I think it all flows from the same school. Something elemental, granular in our makeup, just to be afraid of sort of the reptilian. Even more so, I mean, I think they were more afraid of the reptilian than mammals that, like a bear is probably much more dangerous to us, or a tiger is, but there's not that sort of, I'm sure there's this instinctive fear, but I don't think it's quite endemic in our psyche as reptiles, alligator. They're just so far, and they're like reptiles and sharks sort of have those dead eyes. You can anthropomorphize mammals and think that they understand you and they're your friends. Maybe it's because there's actually a debate right now, and I don't know if it's a real debate or if it's just one of these things that happens, every so often, but whether we domesticated the wolves or the wolves sort of domesticated us by showing us that they were useful to us. Because there was a period of thousands of years, maybe more like hundreds of thousands of years, where the wolves were actually more powerful. They actually dominated us. And then it got to sort of like a stalemate when we got to like the Stone Age spear kind of situation. And maybe it was only bow and arrow where we like I was there, achieved, mammalian, apex predatorship. So it might have been that they made themselves useful to us and more domesticated us. And from there came, dogs. But,
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the things I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about how dragons are depicted, you mentioned reptilian, and yes, that's a primary characteristic. Also, being able to fly, or the large birds of prey, looking at them in that respect. But then also the feline aspect. You mentioned the Chinese dragons that might have the head of a lion or something, and that actually, when we look at it, and the fact that that's how we, that fear that we have of predatory creatures. You have a reptile, you have a large bird of prey, you have a large cat like a lion, and we've somehow mixed them all together into this fantastical creature. They might differ just a little bit between different aspects of culture, but looking at dragons, you can see, okay, yeah, there are these feline aspects. There are these, aspects. It's a predator, and to your point, definitely an apex predator. And did we develop it because it kind of encompassed all of our fears, as far as we might not, maybe never come across a tiger in the wild or something. Funny story, I have come across a bear up in New York, and I have to give a shout out to my classmate who saved my life on a number of occasions. But he was my ranger buddy when we were out there doing summer training, and me being a girl from Arlington, Virginia, I normally only saw bears in zoos. We saw a bear cub when we were out in the woods, and my first reaction was, oh my gosh, look at this cute bear cub. His first reaction was, stop, we have to get out of here.
Right, mama's around.
I said, why? He said, because if there's a cub, mama's around here somewhere.
Right. And you're like, ooh, we need the poo, honey.
It was adorable. It was a little black bear. And
listen, to steal something from my hero someone that I should have been, Jonah Goldberg, bears want to rip your faces off and eat you.
Yes. But this little bear was, it was so adorable. It was a baby. So, yes.
Still wanted to rip your face off and eat you.
Yes. Mama was very close.
Yeah. Those mama bears don't let their cubs stray voluntarily. They're going to be in, eyesight, smell sight. She's keeping an eye on them. Only one, the bear story. So good. I'm glad you got this friend that saved your life. I wish the story was the reverse, where you were the hero, but we've already established that you were basically a bad bookkeeper in the army. Okay, we got it.
We have already established that I was the accidental soldier because I knew nothing about the military. I grew up around here, and I thought Army, Air Force, same difference. And, I get up there for training. Every time we go outside, I'm like, why are we outside again? And they said, do you know what you signed up for?
Yeah. Are you aware of what the Army does?
Absolutely not.
Don't we make those little plastic dolls for boys to play with when they're young? Nope. Okay, well, that's very impressive. Maybe we should back up and go back to dragons. So, listen, you said your love of dragons comes mostly from literature. So you named a couple of authors. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, I don't know that everybody listening would know who Anne McCafferty is and the Dragon Riders of, I think it's Pern, right?
Yes, Pern. Dragon Riders of Pern.
Like, there's like 30 of those books.
Well, I believe she passed away a number of years ago, and if she has not, then I apologize. But I do know that her son and her daughter have continued on writing the series. So there are a number of books. I don't know if it's 30. That sounds about right. But again, an interesting story about what happens. You know, you have a society where dragons are integrated within society, and so again, I'm a huge fan of fantasy. Honestly, when I read sci-fi books, I'm normally thinking about outer space or, you know, robotic, mechanical type things. Mm-hmm. And it's just, then I don't enjoy it as much. But when you start talking about fantasy and winged creatures and magical and fantastical, that's right up my alley.
Well, I think that's sort of the difference between science fiction and fantasy, and they're it's not unusual for people to like one or the other, or to like both. I mean, I like both. And I read a bunch of the Dragon Riders of Pern, but I probably stopped around book 5 or 6 because I don't know. You move on to other things. So tell people a little bit about the basis, just the basic premise of that world. I don't remember too much about it, except that I believe that the hero was female, which is at least in the beginning books, and sort of the, if I remember correctly, I'm going back to 14, 15, 16, something like that, which is like 20,000 years ago. But I think that there was sort of like a fish out of water that turned out that he or she was maybe royalty, and getting the dragon to accept you was sort of like the sign of your status and achievement, and you needed that to sort of claim your place in society, your throat. It was almost like Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone, her getting that dragon. I think that I'm remembering correctly.
You are correct in that there was a female, there was a heroine who she was trying to protect her home. She was undercover. Her family had been slaughtered when she was still very young, and she was fighting against the system. And at the point where, she had almost accomplished what she wanted to achieve as far as retaking her home, there's a series of events in which someone else is placed, in her home upon her. She's the last of her line, and it's kind of like a royal line. But she then becomes part of this search. She's taken back to potentially become a dragon rider. And the dragon riders tended to be men for most of the dragons, but for the queen dragons, they always had female riders. And so she ends up becoming the rider for this queen dragon. And to make a long story short, she saved her entire world because of what she's able to do with her dragon. And in these stories, the dragons are actually like alien creatures. And so this entire civilization is kind of alien on those planets. They've come from somewhere else, and they've kind of developed. They've developed in conjunction with the dragons. So you have part of society, the dragon riders, they're protectors. They're the protectors of society, kind of like the military. Mm-hmm. And then you had the civilians, the folks in the guilds. And so you had the artisans, the crafters, that sort of thing. You had the landowners whose job was to protect the people in their land. But there's a little something for everyone in that series. And so it is, I find it interesting. To your point, like you said, the female protagonist and the fact that she's the one that ends up saving their civilization.
Yeah, that's not unusual now, but it was then. I mean, I think she started writing the books probably in the 70s. And by the way, folks, for me, dropping a series probably a few books in was not unusual. I mean, I think I only read 3 of the Dune books and then said, that's enough. And absolutely with the vampire books, the Anne Rice books.
2 of the Dune books. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I got to, I think I got through 3 and I'm so like, I'm out. It's fine. And I loved Dune. It was great, but it was just like enough. And there was another series. Oh, the Anne Rice vampire books. I read like 3.5 of them. Just like, yeah, that's cool. So this is not unusual for me when if there's a series of 5 books or 6 books, I will commit to the entire series. But it's something that never ends. At some point, I just don't need it anymore.
And I'll say I'm also one of those people. I like to collect books. You might see all of the books that I have in the background that built the shelves. But what I find is if I find an author that I like, then I want to pick up every book that they have in their series. And I'm also one that rereads books. I find that I'm able to find something else in the story every time. So as far as the Timier series, I think I've read it 4 or 5 times, the entire series.
What is the Timier series?
Sorry, what's that?
What is that series?
The Naomi Novak Timier series. There are 9 novels in that series.
Well, tell us about that one. I don't think that's as famous as the Anne McCaffrey ones. Tell us what's special there.
Yeah, I believe that was her first set of novels, and so again, she has this idea of an alternate world in which the Napoleonic Wars are fought with the aid of dragons, and so you have the French that were on one side, and they had superior breeding programs and whatnot. And then Timier was actually a young dragon whose egg was captured by an English, captain in the Navy. And the whole idea of what it took to become a dragon rider, how dragons imprint on, the person that they wanted to be, that they want to be their rider. And one of the things that I love about Timier is right out of the egg, and we learn this, that they learn languages while they're in the egg. People are talking to them, talking about them. But he comes out, the first thing that he says to this English captain is, why are you frowning? Why aren't you happy? And the captain's like, oh, wait a minute, this is a sentient being. I mean, I hadn't really thought of it like that, and they said when he was born, he was the size of a large dog, and then he just grew and grew, because basically he just slept and ate for the first few weeks of his life. But it's his adventures being in the British military, because, they had an aviation force, they had a corps of dragons and dragon riders, and it was the whole idea of what would have happened if we had these wars that had dragons involved. And so Timier, and spoiler alert, turns out Timier is a Chinese dragon. And so he's a little bit different. Of course, this captain, this English captain, really didn't know anything about dragons because he was in the Navy. He never considered that he would have to learn anything. But you had, the French dragons and what sort of dragons there are there, the South American dragons, the Chinese dragons. And so, like I said, this is a 9-book series, and it's just his adventures going through fighting military battles and meeting other dragons and learning and growing. I just thought it was so interesting.
What did Novak characterize dragons from different regions having different characteristics, whether it was abilities, powers, personality traits? Did she try to, borrow from mythology or theology? And if so, if you remember, what were sort of the different traits between the different dragons in her universe from around the world? I'm going to go with the assumption, because I don't know any better, that she probably did some research into the actual mythologies and at least had, significant portions of borrowing from, we'll just call those mythos in there.
Well, as I mentioned, Timier, it turns out he's a Chinese dragon. And so the first time he took to the water and he's swimming, and they're saying, oh, we didn't know dragons could swim. It turns out it's because they said, oh, well, the Chinese dragons have an affinity to water, and so that was part of it.
Like a crocodile.
Then the South American dragons tended to be smaller but more colorful. It was almost like they didn't actually have feathers, but they talked about these dragons that were more bird-like in their depictions, and so those were just a couple of things that stood out to me.
Did they all breathe fire?
Well, they had different breeds. So some breathed fire, some shot acid. So there were the dragons that, they said they don't last very long because when they get older, they lose control of their acid ducts. And so you had the small dragons that were like carriers. They actually used dragons as messengers going back and forth. And so
I would assume they'd be very poisonous, and probably the colorful ones would be very poisonous too, like in the animal kingdom.
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of their defenses.
Acid is actually more realistic than fire. I mean, first of all, all of our bodies create acid. So to turn, to have a gland that makes it offensive, physiologically probably is not impossible at all. I mean, we know that there's plenty of animals, including snakes, that have venom glands that go through their teeth. And that it can shoot out, it can be projected. Fire, I mean, listen, I'm sure something's possible, but it seems like that would be pretty damaging to your own interior as well.
The interesting thing when we were talking about the Pern series, those dragons didn't naturally breathe fire. They had to chew these rocks that would basically upset their stomachs and cause, the fire was the result of their digestive process, but it didn't come naturally then.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, it makes a little bit more. Well, it makes a lot more sense than having the fire go up your your digestive tubes. Yeah, that is something. Because that's the one thing that's really never been explained. I mean, one nice thing about the supernatural is you don't have to explain it. But when somebody bothers to take the time to do it, I definitely appreciate that, especially if it makes even some degree of sense. So while I don't like the idea as vampires as sort of, virals where their bodies adapt and do, and they're sort of like some sort of subhuman unthinking thing, I at least appreciate the effort to explain how a vampirism trait stems from a humanoid. Speaking of vampires and dragons, everyone's most famous vampire, or probably, is Dracula. And Dracula is, Dracul. Dracula, is the Vlad Tepes. I always pronounce it incorrectly. Forgive me. I'm not from Wallachia. And no, he wasn't from Transylvania. He was from Wallachia, which is in the brave Romani in the Carpathian Mountains. Oh God, I shouldn't do accents. But Dracul is the House of the Dragon. So is his family name, House of the Dragon. That was their banner, the dragon. So we have the dragon associated with the vampire, which isn't that far off from being associated with fallen angel, demon, devil.
Well, it wasn't so much that he was associated with the vampire as that he was associated with a noble house. And so to that point, in Western cultures, there developed this point where a dragon was seen as a fierce, ferocious creature that was, again, at the apex. And so he was on coats of arms, like royal houses. He was on the standards of fighting forces. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, it was not surprising that the dragons are associated with nobility and royalty.
But evil nobility and royalty.
Again, misunderstood. Oh, right. I'm kidding. Vlad was not misunderstood. He was, he was.
Well, maybe he was. I mean, if you're a vampire, you didn't choose to be a vampire necessarily. I mean, I know if you're familiar and you want to be a vampire, that may be different. But if you were Dracula, and in some stories, the first vampire, I don't believe that. I believe that Lilith was probably the first vampire, but or maybe Jesus. No, I know. Hit by
in case the lightning bolt.
yeah, this bald spot lightning. Lightning strikes. So yeah, I even lost my train of thought on this whole thing, but yeah, I think we're talking about Vlad and Dracul and right. If you're the first vampire, you didn't choose it. I mean, this is the way you survive. So I mean, do you blame a wolf for killing a deer? No. I mean, we're food to the vampire. It's not that it's evil or necessarily enjoy. Even if they do, I enjoy eating a good steak. It doesn't mean that I'm happy that we have to kill cows to get there. But that's how we live. We're omnivores. And vegans and vegetarians out there, shut up, because the whole thing is everything is spirit and everything has life. So the chickpea and the kernel of corn and the thing of grass and the fish just has as much life spirit as the cow. Yes, okay, it's a free range cow. It's only free range cows I eat.
But don't they actually say that the smell of freshly cut grass, that's actually like a chemical reaction from the grass that is trying to tell their neighbors, watch out, be careful, this person is coming to slaughter us?
Absolutely. It is absolutely the way the grass speaks. Yes. We all know, I mean, everyone knows that I'm an animist and that everything has spirit and life. So we're all horrible murderers, or this is just the way we live. And in the grand experiment of the world, we came out just a little bit too effective. But fear not, this is the Garden of Doom. We are going to put ourselves in extinction sooner rather than later. And don't worry, in about 20 or 30 years, cholera and Legionnaire's disease and yellow fever and malaria will be, all throughout any coastal area in the United States, including major rivers. So, and the world. So fear not, we're gone soon, but this podcast will be forever.
Well, it has been a pleasure.
You're like, yeah, end of the world. Check it. I'm peacing out on this one. All right. Dominique, is there anything that you want to share, promote? Do you have any things that you do outside of your professional world? Do you want to even talk about your professional world at this point after your reputation being sullied as obviously not a contract killer, not a sniper first class?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I am an attorney. I'm an estate planning attorney. And so if we're talking about doom and gloom, my face could actually be in that picture. But the whole point is making sure that you make decisions while you can make decisions for yourself. So if you don't already have an estate plan, or if you haven't already considered what do you want to have happen when the doom comes, then that's what I deal with. I deal with individuals and families and helping them, assisting them with how they can take care of each other.
That's right. People, you can't avoid death or taxes, and really maybe not even disability, and that's what she helps you plan for. So it's not thinking about death or disability, it's thinking about the people who are not dead and disabled, who have to pick up the pieces and deal with it and maybe take care of you while you can't take care of yourself. So actually, it's a garden of hope, not a garden. It just depends on which side of the coin you look at. Let me look at doom. You look at the sun shining. You look at the happy points. So you are licensed in, 3 states?
No, I'm licensed in Virginia and the District of Columbia. Although with our team, we have folks on our team that can assist people in Maryland and New York as well.
Whoa. Screw Delaware and New Jersey. Losers.
We're getting there. We are expanding our team. We're getting there.
Okay. All right. Well, New Jersey and Delaware, keep wishing.
Watch out.
Stuff to look forward to.
North Carolina. We're working on North Carolina now.
Oh, expanding northward and southward. That's very ambitious. 2-front war. Maybe the dragon.
They brought in the military expert, right?
Right. Maybe the dragons can handle it, but Napoleon didn't handle it so well. But okay, it's different. Businesses expand, and that's a good thing. Okay. Well, that's terrific. So now, if you want to find Dominique, where would they find your professional profile?
My professional profile is on LinkedIn, but I'm also a partner with Dunlap Bennett Ludwig. So if you look for my name, that's where you'll find me. And again, I'm more than happy to assist anyone. I look at this as providing peace of mind.
That's right. So, folks, technically my boss, but I don't think directly in my chain of command, and neither does she. So, yeah, I probably won't be fired or disciplined for this, but, who knows?
Absolutely not.
I throw caution into the wind, people. I have a show called Garden of Doom. How you think I'm worried about employment? Please. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Dominique. One of the things I believe is that everybody has something interesting to do, some passion or hobby or expertise that everyone else in their family thinks they're kooky about. I don't. Those are the things that I want on the show. So the person who knows everything about submarines, or wants to tell me about submarines. The person who knows everything about friggin' koi fish. Maybe not that one, but octopus, absolutely. Anyway, and we have to thank our friend John Kiernan again, wrestling entrance composer, theme writer extraordinaire, and Dragon Lee, member of La Facción Ingobernables, Dragon Lee, wrestler who you may know from Ring of Honor, among other places, for letting us use his song, so Dragon Lee, Dragons, and oh my God, with the title song, I think it says I Walk on Fire, but whatever it is you're going to hear it, I really should get this. Okay, so I'm going to vamp a little bit while I get it, because I'm not going to butcher the song. They were so nice to let me use it, because they don't have to. Scorched Earth, that is the name of it. It's a cool song. Kiernan rocks. Dragon Lee, thank you. Dragon Lee's brother rocks. That's Roosh, not Rosh. Roosh. His father, Le Bestia, the Beast. He rocks. They all rock. They all rock except for Kid Rock, who sucks. Even though he's a cowboy. It's not a cowboy. It's from Detroit. There's no cowboys from Detroit.
From Detroit.
He's even less of a cowboy than Cowboy Adam Page. Ooh, sorry, wrong show. Anyway, thank you, John. Thank you, Dragon. Thank you, Dominique. Thank you for listening. Please rate, review, give us 5 stars, share with your friends. Apple and Spotify let you write nice things. Hope you're enjoying that we're doing the combination of some more conversational shows along with sort of the historic and the lecture-based shows. We have an interesting variety, I think, that you can't find anywhere else other than the Garden of Doom. So once again, thanks to our guest, and thanks all of you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
A youngster, the fire breather was everything I have hunted. Who want this? In my water, my spirit, the harder. In my time, no matter minor appearance. You know, you feel it. I've been greater than time. Think about things in the world, thinking this flavor of mine. I got the heart of a warrior, got my fire in my spirit. And everything in this world, you can hear it. Who can step up? Walking through the fire, yeah. Through my desire, I'm walking through the fire. Smoke is what I require. It's the heart of a dragon, yeah. When I'm stepping through the fire, from the neck up, moving down with ability, hang down when it's lyrically, physically, I can hurt anybody in the world of the stages I've been moving this world, I've been taking these pages, this is my lifestyle. Right now, I want it all, want the championships in my world, it's time to ball for everything that you feel, it's me, I'm the one that you see. Truly one, Dragon Lee, fire breathing. Walking through the fire.